here to your Indian psychology course video, assuming there is only Maths Krishna in class, and assuming that no one else is going to join and that I'm audible, we'll start. I'm assuming that you have gone through your course outline. Irrespective, we'll do it now once more so that you have an idea of what we're going to do and what we're going to look at through this whole course. Meanwhile, like I said, my name is Tripti, and I finished my master's in clinical psychology, and Indian psychology is my specialization. So hopefully I'll be able to do justice to this. Let's. Okay. If you have your course outline with you, we'll go through it once before we can begin with your units. You can open it at your own place. I have it open here. All right. So the name of your course is Indian psychology, and it's an introductory course for you, and there are about 4 units as we go. The first unit is Introduction to Psychology, and it has about 3 subtopics. First is historical development of Indian psychology. Second is the key concepts, and third is comparison with Western psychology with the Indian psychology. Unit 2 is theoretical foundation, that is Samkhya and Yoga psychology, Vedanta and psychological insights. Third is Buddhist psychology, Jain psychology, Bhagavad Gita methods of knowing. The third unit is named as psychological constructs in Indian thought. And the subtopics are concepts of self and consciousness, mind and mental processes, emotions and the management, well-being and spiritual practices. Your fourth unit is contemporary issues and future directions. The 3 things under them are integration of Indian and Western psychology, ethical and cultural considerations, and emerging trends and future research. So we're going to use Goldberg's method of learning here. That's mostly that I talk and you listen, and then if you have some questions, you ask me after you reflect after class, hopefully, which you will do. This is what I was thinking, that we combine unit 1 and unit 3. As you can see, the numbering is not correct here. After unit 3, it's unit 6, so it's unit 4. So we'll combine unit 1 with unit 3 because it actually comes as a flow. So as you see the key concepts in Indian philosophical tradition, that is, quite similar, and in fact the same thing as in unit 3, because that is where we discuss what are the mental processes, what is mind, what is self and consciousness, right? And what does it mean when you talk about well-being and spiritual practices. So I was thinking we'll combine it, but just in case you think that's not enough in the first unit, we'll go through it again later, right? Then we'll go to unit 6, which is contemporary. Unit 6, which is given here, which is supposed to be unit 4. That is contemporary issues and future directions. For the purpose that after you have seen what basically this is, I would like you to, be able to visualize the future of this course, how it's going to help you and if it's going to help you at all. And unless you are going to be able to see that, I don't see a point in going ahead, right? Because your unit 2, which is theoretical foundation, is basically the whole course in itself. So 1 and 3 is just an introduction. 6 is where we will see how to integrate Indian as well as what the other Western psychology says, and the future of how it is and how it is currently and all that, right? And then we go to the major part, that is the theoretical foundation, which we'll look at last, because I think that's quite a chunk. And that is the part which I believe personally that is going to take us some time. The rest is just basics that, it's going to introduce you to the subject and, yeah, the basic outline. It gives you it's basically a skeleton for the whole course, right? So assuming that you are okay with your units and your modules and the course outline, there are quite a bit of references given over here, out of which I've used few of these papers, and you will see the references as we go in the PPT. So I am going to suggest that you find access to these and have a look at it yourself. The PPT should be quite enough for you to, you know, help you understand what it is, but just in case, and not just in case, I mean, I would suggest that you do further reading. All right, then. Okay, so that's about your course outline. Shall we begin with the class? Okay, assuming that you're still listening, I am going to start with your first module. Just a minute. So right now I have made PPT for your first module, as and when we are about to finish it, I will incorporate your third module, like I said. And then, so you'll have basically 3 PPTs, right? Because your first unit is going to be combined with your third. So yeah, 1 PPT for that and the other two. All right. So your unit 1, I'll change the name later on. Right now it's a first module. Okay, so it's called the Introduction to Indian Psychology. It's like I said, it's very basics of what it is, and we're going to delve into what it means to uh, learn Indian psychology, or what it how is it different from the other existing schools of psychology, right? Um, right. Indian psychology, what is it? The paradigm of Indian psychology and psychological knowledge, right? So, to understand any school that you guys are aware that psychology comes from philosophy as a mother, and that is where psychology comes from. And I'm not aware if you have any idea about Western psychology, or the basis for how psychology came into being, but that is another Indian psychology. So one thing I want to say before we start is that if you have any knowledge about psychology, if you have any assumption, any vague idea about what psychology is, I would suggest you keep that aside, because Western psychology is completely different from Indian psychology, and that difference comes from the paradigm of the whole subject, right? And what do I mean by paradigm is how we're going to start. All right. So, what is a paradigm? A paradigm, let's assume it's like a structure, right? And it which is ontology and epistemology. Now, what are the things, right? Now, as you can see, I have written paradigms become the lenses through and therefore thus they become often difficult to see, right? So it can be a catalyst which helps you view the whole thing, but is not quite visible to you. It's just an instrument through which the whole thing is done. But then again, it's very important, because that is the very bottom line for it, right? Right. Now, now you assume that this paradigm is that of a sunglass. Okay, so it is with different shape, frames, and lengths, and all that, right? So this is important. Like I said, it influences everything that you are going to see, right? So through this lens is what you see the world as. Similarly, a paradigm is a structure through which you view this subject, right? Now, why are these important? Why are paradigms important? Paradigms are important to acknowledge because the beliefs that compose and guide us and action to how you're going to view the subject, or the concept or the theories that you're going to learn further, right? Now, what I mentioned two words before, that is ontology and epistemology. Now, what are these two things, right? So ontological and epistemological belief systems are joined in paradigm. What is ontology? An ontology is a philosophical belief system about the nature world. Just a minute. Right. So, it's a philosophical belief system about the nature of the world. Example, whether it is patterned or predictable or constantly recreated by humans. So, psychology is constantly people, situations around you, what causes all of these things are the questions that keep coming to your mind. Now, what are these exactly? So it is a set of beliefs about reality that we accept and live according to. So, for example, as a person, I have a set of beliefs, right, that I live according to, or set of values, or what is the terms that you use interrelatedly, that I live according to. So for me, something is right, something is wrong, and something I must do, and something I shouldn't do. So all of these are set of beliefs that we hold as institutions, right? That I lead my life according to. Now, our ontological belief system informs both a sense of the social world and correspondingly what we can learn about it and how we can do so, right? The ontological question as what is the form and nature of reality, and therefore what is there that can be known about it, right? So basically, the question whether uh, what I am seeking to know, is it the truth itself, and how that is on my belief system to view the world outside, how I treat people, or how I think people are treating me, right? All of these questions are ontological questions, right? So I hope I'm able to give you a fair idea of what ontology is. Now, next is what is epistemology. Now, epistemology is how I can know reality. So, ontology is the questions that you have, right? Epistemology is how you are going to get answers to these questions, right? So, whether it's going to be through perception, interpretation, or examination. It's epistemology is a philosophical belief system about how research proceeds and what counts as knowledge itself. Knowledge for you. So when I mean knowledge, I don't particularly mean bookish knowledge or something like that. I mean knowledge is anything. So how do I know that a book is a book, or how do I know that what I am wearing is known as a dress, or that I am a human and how am I different from that of an animal, or any kind of knowledge, right? So, how do I get that knowledge, or how do I acquire that knowledge, and how do I use this knowledge to proceed further to do my research further? So, how do I know that I am different from that of an animal and that I am a human, and what constitutes to be a human, right? And then I do my research further to understand that, oh, this is what makes me different from that of an animal. So I do further research. So this philosophical belief system, the system behind this whole process, is known as epistemology. All right. So our epistemological position informs how we enact the role of a researcher and how we understand the relationship between the researcher and the research participants. All right. Now, there are multiple paradigms or worldviews that guide psychological research and knowledge. Like I said, we are individual people with different ontological and epistemological systems, beliefs, or paradigms. Ontology and epistemology is equal to paradigms, right? So we each have a paradigm. So there is a paradigm for Indian psychology. There is a paradigm. You are Yoga Shastra students, so you have a paradigm to study that particular subject, or there is a paradigm to study science, history, and so on and so forth, right? So there are multiple paradigms and worldviews. So, like I said, viewed as a sunglass, right? That is going to help you see the subject or see the particular utilize different ways of grouping and naming paradigms. That's to say that each one to his own. They are going to. So all our schools in psychology, they have their own paradigms, right? So they are like there is a behaviorist system, there is a existential system, there's a humanistic system. We call it as schools in psychology. So humanistic school, behaviorist school, psychodynamic school. So each of these are different paradigms through whatever it is, right? Now, a paradigm, like I said, is a system epistemology, right? So ontology plus epistemology is a paradigm. Now, what is a paradigm of Indian psychology, right? So, in Indian thought, to experience knowledge that is ultimate, what does that mean? Now, first you need to define what is Indian thought in itself, right? And what does it mean to learn something, or what is knowledge in Indian tradition or thought, right? So, what does it mean? So, according to the paradigm of life, the life that you currently live, how to perfect that, to transcend sorrow and suffering, to reach the goal of liberation. This is very, 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 very different from the current Western psychology, or even the previous Western psychology. I mean, the psychology that is being practiced so till date, and it's currently happening as well. Now, this is very different from the approach that is taken by the majority, even right now. India, anywhere in the world, it's only coming up, and people are becoming more aware of it. And I think we are becoming more uh, accommodating of it, right? So we are opening our eyes to it now again, once again after millennials. So as in when we go through the modules, you see that these four are majorly the ultimate goal of Indian psychology, which is a very different view from the ontological and epistemological system of that of Western psychology. Or you'll see that there is some kind, like very minute kind of difference when it comes to the Asian part, right? So there is something called Japanese psychology and Chinese psychology as well. So even they have their own, paradigms. Now there is going to be some basic similarities there as well, but that's because we are part of Asia, right? But then again, this particular psychology, Indian, is very different from them as well. You will see how as we go further, right? So these are the four things that we focus on when we talk about experiencing knowledge. So we're not really talking about learning. I mean, to say it's very broad and encompassing, not only just about learning mundane things like how to do with material things in everyday life, right? Or things like that. The very mundane things. It's much beyond that. It's very rooted in philosophy that way. Honestly, I think that is the main difference between Indian and other psychology. All right. So different means of valid knowledge in Indian psychology. So there are about six of them that we'll see later. Right. The major thing right now that is accepted, at least in by the Western world, in terms of Indian psychology, something that I disagree about, that we have to keep, validating ourselves with the West, but we have to do it. So, uh, the three current valid means of knowledge in Indian philosophy, accepted by the West, may I add, is perception, inference, and testimony. We'll see what these are in detail further. Right now, perception is basically direct perception through senses, right? So you have five senses major that we talk about, but the recent science research will tell you that there are about 11. Some say 21, but I mean, it keeps updating, but the standard is 5. So direct perception through your five senses, that is valid. Second is inference, that is deductive knowledge through perception. So you perceive some of that, deduction, that is inference. Third is testimony, knowledge acquired from other people. Now, something that you need to clarify here and understand very clearly is, when I say knowledge acquired from other people, does not mean gossips and rumor. Okay, it's not like my friend has told me and I got this from her. Not that kind of thing. So in our tradition, we believe in discussion and getting information, knowledge from scholars, and people who what we what we call as authenticity, right? So I will believe that I am not supposed to put my hand in acquired from other people. So that means that not that we discuss among ourselves, and of course that is, but that is at a later point. But here we are talking about proper means of knowledge. So testimony, that's a third. Now, valid knowledge is known as prama, and means to this valid knowledge. So, like I said, the previous thing, previous what we saw, the three is what we are continuing right now. Now, there are six major schools of orthodox philosophy together with Jaina and Buddhism. Systems of knowledge set out the valid knowledge and how to arrive at this knowledge. So when we talk about Indian psychology, there are different schools, just like Western psychology has different schools like psychodynamics, psychoanalysis, behaviorism, humanistic, gestalt, and all that. We have our own system of own schools in Indian philosophy. Majorly six that we identify, which other than the uh, you know Astika and Nastika, that is Jaina and Buddhism, are also here. There is Sikhism as well. Now, the relationship between the valid knowledge and the self and the knowledge of the self is critical. This is where the whole of Indian psychology revolves around. Okay, so what is knowledge? Whether it is valid and invalid, and whether ultimately this knowledge is going to lead me to the knowledge of the self. This is what the whole subject of Indian psychology is about. The moment you understand this, everything around it starts making sense. Okay, so whatever we're going to discuss in class, or I'm going to say in class, it has to ultimately lead to this. Anything that is going in the other direction is definitely not in the paradigm or in the view of this subject, right? Now, the self is the ultimate knowledge to be sought. Like I said, every the self means is something we'll see, right? The self here is definitely not the self of me as a person. It's a completely different concept. Now, the means of acquiring this knowledge are given in the Shastras, that is testimonial knowledge, like I said. So, unlike the other psychology, existing psychology currently, we have a very different means of knowledge altogether. Do not, I mean, when we talk about experimentation and all that, it is much, much, much different from the current, you know, psychology that is being practiced, right? So our knowledge, we consider testimonial knowledge as one of the major uh, basis for knowing anything, and that comes from the Shastras. That is the very basic from where we start to explore this subject or the field. All right. So, what all comes under Shastra and all these? Right. Now, the ultimate knowledge is acquired through practices prescribed in these texts. All right. Like I said, this forms the very basis for the field. The centrality of self or person is centrality of self or person in IP. Now, uh, like I said, what is the very basis for forming this IP is the self or the individual itself, right? So, like I said, any question, any doubts or any clarity that you need to have, you need to bring it down to the question of whether this answers or is going to clear my doubt about the self. Self here, in a broader aspect, for the sake of the language English, let's call it the person, but it's very different. We will see further more in detail. But right now, let's call the self as a person. Right? That is the whole central point in IP, Indian psychology. The overarching concern in Indian psychology is the person, his purification, his purity, his freedom, and his liberation. So, current, right, while he is living this life, his purity. But how is he going to attain perfection? How is he going to get freedom or liberation from the cycle of birth and death? Uh, all of these are the prime questions that we explore in Indian psychology. All right. So the person per se is consciousness as such. Now, your consciousness does not mean, I mean, we call consciousness as awareness as well. But when I am talking about awareness, it means in a very deep philosophical way of awareness. Okay, I'm not talking about just being aware that, oh, I am here. Not just that, it's being aware of everything, every small thing, right? So I am sitting here, I am taking this class, I am the one speaking. There is wind around me, there is these small sounds around me. Being aware of everything. These are at a very, what you say, uh, at the very base point. But what I'm talking about is the awareness at a very deeper level. So, it's a very subtle way, subtle sort of awareness, right? So the very minutest thing. So in terms of Western psychology, I would say that at every moment I am aware of what I am feeling. So whether it's not about just feeling, oh, I'm sad right now. It's not just that. It's about I'm feeling that fullness or that happiness, and uh, ever being content. So that awareness that I as a person have constantly, irrespective of whatever state I am, whatever where I am, wherever I am, that very state is known as consciousness in Indian psychology. All right. So the person itself is considered to be this consciousness in Indian psychology, and this is very unique and central to Indian psychology. That is not uh, there in any other psychology, including the other Asian psychology that we have, right? Now, the ultimate purpose of life is to attain the unconditioned state of pure consciousness, that is Brahman or Atman. So, I am this person right now, and there is a pure consciousness. Like I said, we consciousness, which is supposed to be the unconditioned state of what we are right now at a conditioned stage. We have to transcend from this conditioned stage to an unconditioned state of pure consciousness. So right now in consciousness, conditioned state, from conditioned state to unconditioned state, that's pure.